Good evening, and welcome. Tonight we stand at a profound intersection of hope, science, and ethics. We are here to discuss a technology that could reshape our future. Germline gene editing, the act of making heritable changes to our very DNA. This is no longer the realm of science fiction. It is a scientific reality knocking at our door, presenting us with a dilemma of unprecedented gravity. To navigate this complex issue, we are joined by two distinguished experts. Dr. Kenji Tanaka is a pioneering geneticist whose work is at the forefront of this technology. And Dr. Isabella Rossi is a renowned sociologist and bioethicist whose work calls for profound caution. We will begin with opening statements. Dr. Tanaka, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Reed. I want to begin not with the science, but with the human cost of inaction. Consider Huntington's disease, a cruel neurological condition that slowly robs a person of their mind and body, and which a child of an affected parent has a 50% chance of inheriting. Think of Tay-Sachs, which devastates infants, or the lifelong struggle imposed by cystic fibrosis. These are not abstract probabilities. They are profound and preventable tragedies, encoded into the very blueprint of a family. For decades, medicine has been reactive, treating symptoms after they appear. We now possess a tool, CRISPR-Cas9, with the precision to correct the specific genetic errors that cause these diseases before they can ever manifest. Therefore, I argue that we have a moral imperative to use it. When we have the power to prevent such immense suffering, to withhold that power is an act of ethical negligence. Every revolutionary medical advancement, from blood transfusions and organ transplants to vaccines, was met with fear and accusations of playing God. Yet these are now celebrated as cornerstones of public health that have saved countless millions of lives. Gene editing is the next logical step in that progression. I do not dismiss the ethical concerns. They are significant and demand our utmost attention. However, these are manageable challenges that call for robust international regulation and meticulous scientific oversight, not insurmountable barriers that justify paralysis. We can and must create a framework that limits its use to the prevention of severe monogenic diseases. I envision a future where no child is born with the certainty of suffering from a debilitating genetic inheritance. A future where we have used our collective ingenuity to lift a terrible burden from the human family.
Thank you, Dr. Tanaka. Dr. Rossi, your opening statement.
Thank you. Dr. Tanaka speaks with compelling passion, and the desire to eliminate disease is a noble one that we all share. However, the path he proposes, while paved with good intentions, leads us toward a precipice of unprecedented and irreversible consequences. My primary objection is rooted in the precautionary principle. We're talking about altering the human gene pool, the shared heritage of our entire species, in a permanent way. The sheer hubris of believing we can foresee all the long-term, multi-generational consequences of a single edit is staggering. A genetic change intended to solve one problem could, centuries from now, create a catastrophic new one in a different environmental context. We simply do not know enough about the intricate web of genetic interactions to make such permanent alterations safely. This is not a clinical trial on one person. It is an uncontrolled experiment on a family's entire lineage. Secondly, the proposed boundary between therapy and enhancement is a philosophically and practically indefensible line in the sand. Today, we say we will only cure Huntington's. But what about a predisposition to heart disease or Alzheimer's? What about genes linked to height, metabolism, or even intelligence? Once the technology is perfected and commercialized, market forces and human ambition will inevitably push us down this slippery slope, sparking a genetic arms race among those who can afford it. This leads to my third and perhaps most troubling point: social justice. This technology will be extraordinarily expensive. It will be accessible only to the affluent, allowing them to purchase genetic advantages for their children. This would not merely exacerbate the existing chasm between the rich and the poor, it would inscribe inequality into our very biology, creating a genetic schism in humanity. We risk engineering a future with a biological upper and lower class.
Thank you, Dr. Rossi. I would now like to move into a moderated discussion. Let me begin with you, Dr. Rossi. Dr. Tanaka draws a powerful parallel to vaccines, which also prevent disease and were once controversial. When we can agree on targeting a universally recognized and horrific disease like Tay-Sachs, why is germline editing fundamentally different? Where does that analogy break down for you?
That is a critical question, and the distinction is not merely technical, but profoundly ethical. The analogy breaks down on two key fronts: the scope of the intervention and the principle of consent. A vaccine is a somatic intervention. It affects one individual by stimulating their immune system. It lives and dies with that person. Germline editing, by contrast, is an irrevocable change not just to an individual, but to their entire lineage. It alters the genetic inheritance of their children, their grandchildren, and every subsequent generation. This leads directly to the issue of consent. An individual can consent to a vaccine, but an embryo cannot. More importantly, the countless generations to follow have absolutely no say in the matter. We are making a permanent medical decision on behalf of people who do not exist yet. The scale of potential error is not just personal, but existential, for an entire family line. That is a moral boundary that vaccines never approach.
Dr. Tanaka, let me turn that to you. Dr. Rossi raises the specter of a genetic aristocracy and the slippery slope to enhancement. Addressing her concerns, how can we realistically construct and enforce global regulations to prevent this? History suggests that what can be done for profit or power eventually will be done.
The concern is valid, and the challenge of governance is undoubtedly the most serious one we face. It requires a commensurate level of global cooperation. I propose the establishment of an international consortium, a body with scientific and ethical authority akin to the International Atomic Energy Agency, which has, for decades, managed the proliferation of a technology far more dangerous than this one. This body would set strict, enforceable guidelines, licensing clinics and research institutions, and maintaining a transparent registry of all approved procedures, strictly limited to a pre-agreed list of severe, life-threatening monogenic diseases. The technology itself is not unethical. Its application determines its morality. We do not ban scalpels because they can be used as weapons. We regulate their use in the hands of trained surgeons. Regarding the justice argument, while the initial costs will be high, this is the history of every transformative technology. Automobiles, computers, and even DNA sequencing itself were once exclusively for the wealthy. Through innovation and scale, they democratize. Furthermore, the long-term healthcare savings from completely eradicating a disease like hemophilia or muscular dystrophy would be astronomical, ultimately benefiting our entire society.
If I may, the analogy to the IAEA is a worrying one. That body has not entirely prevented the proliferation of nuclear weapons, it has only slowed it. A single rogue state, or billionaire with a private lab, is all it would take to cross the line into enhancement. And the democratization argument is overly optimistic. Basic healthcare is still not democratized globally. To believe that the most advanced genetic technology in history will be equitably distributed is, I fear, a dangerous fantasy.
And I would argue that to deny this to everyone, because we fear its misuse by a few, is to hold the suffering hostage to our fears. We must have the courage to govern technology, not to abandon it. The potential for misuse is a call for robust governance, not a justification for prohibition. We must focus our energy on building those strong ethical and legal guardrails now, before the technology becomes widespread.
We are nearing the end of our time. I would like to ask each of you for a brief closing statement. Dr. Rossi, please.
Tonight, I have urged caution, and I do so again. My objections are threefold and absolute. First, the risk of making irreversible, unforeseen errors in the human gene pool is a burden no single generation has the right to place on all subsequent ones. Second, the slippery slope from curing disease to enhancing human traits is unavoidable, and it will lead to a competitive, anxious society obsessed with genetic perfection. And third, it threatens to entrench social inequality at a biological level, fracturing the very concept of a shared human experience. I appeal not for ignorance, but for humility. Let us continue to use gene science for somatic therapies, for cancer treatments, for understanding disease. But we must have the wisdom to leave the germline, our common inheritance, untouched. Our quest to perfect human life must not lead us to fracture our shared humanity.
Thank you, Dr. Rossi. Dr. Tanaka, your closing statement.
I want to bring us back to where we started. The relief of profound human suffering. This is the unambiguous goal. The history of medicine, the very essence of civilization, is a continuous intervention in the natural course of things to improve and save lives. We build shelters against the storm, we create vaccines against viruses, and we set broken bones. Using our intelligence to correct a flaw in our own code is not playing God. It is the ultimate expression of our humanity and our compassion. The fears Dr. Rossi articulates are real, but fear has never been a wise long-term counselor. Every great leap forward has been accompanied by voices of doubt. Our task is not to run from the future, but to build it responsibly. My vision is not of a perfect, enhanced world, but a responsible one, where science, guided by rigorous ethics and deep compassion, finally liberates our children from the tyranny of their genetic code.
Thank you both for your insightful and deeply articulate contributions to this vital conversation. You have laid bare the central tension of our age, the extraordinary promise of science to cure our most cruel diseases, weighed against the profound and potentially irreversible risks to our society and our species. The science is rapidly becoming a reality, moving from the laboratory into the public square. The enduring question for us all is not can we, but should we? The future of the human story is waiting for our answer. Good evening.